Welcome to Costly Conversations. I'm super excited because we have Dr. Casilda Maxwell with us today. She is a PhD in psychology, and we are super excited because she's going to give us a little bit of a different perspective. Right, Dr. Max?
Yes. Looking forward to it.
Yes, ma'am. Well, and really quick, just a quick piece of housekeeping here. We are promoting the Patreon. This conversation is brought to you by my patron supporters, and I definitely want to see you in there. We have what we call the Costly community, and in that Costly community, we can talk, we can communicate, we can have really much deeper conversations than even just on the podcast. Would you believe it? And with that, I actually would invite you to come along and have a conversation with me, you, Dr. Max, and whoever else is going to show up, because she says she'd be interested in having a more VIP, a little more exclusive conversation where we can just sit down and just ask her whatever's on the top of our head. So if at the end of this conversation you're like, shoot, I would love to ask her these things, well, come along, join the team, help us out, keep the show going, help us get to more places, help us do some in-person stuff. That'd be super dope. And support what we're doing and have an awesome conversation. So let's go ahead and get started. I know we've gone on for quite just a second, and Dr. Max, I'm super excited. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. This should be exciting. I'm intrigued.
I'm intrigued. So let's just go ahead and get it out the way. Like, Dr. Max, who are you? Like, how did you get to become Dr. Max? If you could just give us the abbreviated version of like your credentialing and everything.
All right. Well, first and foremost, always got to shout out my hometown, Baltimore, Maryland, be more. And so that's originally where I'm from. I am currently living in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So, quickly, my credentialing, I'm a psychologist in counseling psychology, got my PhD there. Went to Howard University, HU, representing. So I got my master's and my doctorate there, and I came to Grand Rapids through finishing my pre-doc and post-doc hours. And so I've been here since, and I kind of work in various things, cultural diversity and trauma. And so that's what I focus on a lot in my practice. And I've been practicing 5 years post-grad. And of course, I've been practicing many years because I have a master's degree in this too. So yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, we're
Yeah.
thankful that you're out there doing the work. A lot of people talk about changing the world, but it's kind of rare to find people who are actually doing the things required to affect such a change. So
Yeah.
appreciate you doing that and actually stepping up to the plate. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's just hop right into it because I know there's a lot of things that you care about, a lot of things that you don't care about, and one of the things that I found out just in having brief conversations with you is you don't even really be watching the news like that. Like I was talking about Joe Rogan and stuff, and you were just like, "Man, I just heard about that. Like I didn't even know." I'm like, "Bro, you don't watch the news?" Like,
Yeah.
but let's not so much talk about the Joe Rogan situation because by the time this comes out, the thing will have changed and evolved. Maybe we'll rush on it, but let's talk about your, I guess, the way you see the news and the, I guess, the stuff that we run into just as Americans or as people of the world. Like what's going on with the news?
Yeah. So I'll say like I used to watch the news actually quite often. And until like I probably started studying for my EPPP exam, which was the license exam. So that was probably about 2017 or so. And so only time I would really get up and watch the news was because I need to know the weather for the day, traffic or whatever. But every time I would tune in, or of course the presidential elections, because that's mainly the time I tune in too. But every time I would tune in, if there was something going on in the community, I realized there's just been this evolving experience of more opinion for newscasters than kind of the facts. Like this happened, this is what's going on, here's what the police say. Not objective. It's very opinionated with delivery of the message. And so, fast forward to 2020, right? We all know what happened in 2020. COVID happened. And the riots, there's several murders of Black and brown people, right? And which was happening before then, but there's this huge highlight. And what I recognize at since then, it's been much more opinion and emotion. And so as a psychologist, I am real quick. And I guess one of the other things is I'm very in tune with myself and how my emotions change when I'm interacting with others. So when I'm interacting with others, and if I can check myself and know where I'm at, and I was actually in a good mood, and I'm interacting with someone else, and all of a sudden I'm feeling irritable or frustrated or angry or sad, um, I recognized that when I would watch the news, not only was the news upsetting, but the emotion was intensified because of how it was delivered. So I've noticed, and just even I say about a month ago, I was watching the news and they were talking about like vaccines and all that stuff. And it was the way it was delivered, they had opinions about people who were vaccinated. You got, one channel is about opinions about people who are vaccinated and the lies that, CDC is telling, right? And then the other end, you have people who are upset with people who are not vaccinated and they should go to jail, right? And then you see all this other stuff. And it's just like, I would notice how much my emotions would shift. And it was like, these are not mine. And I'm like, and then what would happen is, of course, I'm a psychologist, right? So when I'm talking to my clients and I see the same emotion that was delivered in the news or exact same statements that I've heard repeatedly, it's just kind of like, why does this sound like a broken record? And I'll ask them, have you been watching the news and da 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 da? And they're like, yeah. And it's, they have the same emotions that the news is broadcasting. And then so I was like, yeah, I can't watch news. So I actually read more articles than I like watch, because you can read an article from your lens and your emotions and where you are. Of course, you can get the tone of an article, but like I don't pick up others' and emotions in those articles. It's something about being able to read and just be like, oh, okay, yeah, that person was upset, but I'm not upset. But when I'm watching something, you're taking in what you're seeing, what you're hearing, that all can change. And so I noticed that like so many of my clients, they repeat exactly what they hear on the news. They have the same emotion behind it. And then they turn around and project that same emotion onto people they interact with, right? So you have this perpetual sense of fear, this perpetual sense of anger. And I'm like, who's thinking for themselves? Who's doing their own research? Who is actually allowing themselves to take a break and check in with yourself? Do some self-care. Like, it was just too much for me and I was getting overwhelmed. And on top of that, like around that time, I also had COVID around 2020. And I was just like, all of this is just too much. Too much is going on. And I was just like, yeah, I'm going to take a break. And I noticed that when I started to heal and I went back to watching the news, I was just like, this is too much. Why is this so intense? And I had never seen the news broadcasted like that, but I've noticed it's just this evolving sense of opinion behind every story. And I was just like, wow, that's not typical.
Yeah, no, that is interesting that you say that. And I would agree in basically every sense that there is a lot of opinion and emotion. And you go to look at your favorite anchors on these networks, whether it be the big names like CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and you go to the big names because that's the pull. But most of these guys are opinion guys. And very rarely will you run into like a true news anchor of sorts where they give you the facts, leave out all their personal biases. Maybe they'll play a testimonial from somebody that might be slanted in a way or two, but it's like, that's not like our leader or our false god of sorts who is on the television telling us what we need to know and how to feel. I suppose that's kind of where I run into it too. And I tune into the news quite often, and I make sure to run like a diverse population of news. Like I'll tell my Google system like, hey Google, tell me the news, and I'll make sure to play like, some of the left stuff, some of the right stuff, just so I can make sure to hear. And it's funny the amount of stories that get left out when you're listening to one or the other. And I'm like, wait a minute, they did not talk about that What?
Well,
These
the part
people.
of the story that they leave out.
Mm-hmm.
Like they only show you like a snippet that they want to show. I
Right.
can't do
And
that.
it's
So
like, bro.
I tend to dig and find out the whole entire story. I want to see the video that shows from the beginning to end. I want to see the 2 second clip that you continue to roll as you speak your opinion.
Right. And I think
You can have
there's
that.
something that's been kind of crazy that's happened in the last few years where I think everybody knew that, if you live in these inner city areas or
Hmm.
maybe even outside of them, there's a good likelihood that you might get pulled over by the police. And if you get pulled over and everything's not buttoned up, you'll get hassled by these city cops of sorts. And,
Hmm.
situation can get kind of bad, situation can get real bad, situation can be fine. It just kind of depends on how you play and how they play. But
Hmm.
then we saw in the last few years, like, oh man, this it's almost like all the news broadcasters like, yo, people love to watch black men die. And I don't want to make it like this huge race thing, but
No,
like people love to see
yes.
it. It's crazy.
I I feel like we glorify tragedy.
Yes. It's like you're driving by and you see, like, why is the traffic going so slow? And you finally get to the point where it's like, oh, there's this whole car wreck, and there's no reason for the traffic to be moving this slow. Like as soon
Hmm.
as we get by, it starts moving again. Like they're
Hmm.
on the side of the road. Yes, we slowed down a little bit, but we didn't need to move this slow.
Mm-mm.
What's happening?
Yeah.
We're all
2 miles
watching.
per hour.
We're all
Before.
watching the car on fire. We're all watching the train wreck. We're all watching. Oh man, is that the ambulance? Oh man. Oh, I wonder if they're okay. It's like, bro, keep going. But
Yeah.
not to get sidetracked, but it seems like we do really love to see the pain, the struggle,
Mm.
and whether you're empathizing from a good place or you're just like, oh well, he had what was coming to him, or this happened and this happened, and like, bro, like, what is? Talk to me, Dr. Max. Help me understand. Make it make sense.
We, so I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you and I'm like, I got 50 million things running in my head because you're talking about things that I'm always complaining about.
Right.
Like, how do like America, and I don't want to make this a race issue, but sometimes it is,
Sometimes it
right?
is.
Like sometimes it is, right? We tend, so with the Black community, we see this every day, right? I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. I lived in the city, lived in the hood, then moved to the county, what we call the county, which is the suburbs, and then moved back into the city and the hood. And I'm like, so everybody's what we're broadcasting is we're broadcasting the people getting pulled over, right?
Hmm.
Walk down the street of Baltimore, Maryland, and see how cops harass you then, right? Like this is stuff that has been happening, right? But what we have come to is this sense of needing to record what's happening,
Mm.
right? We glorify, we get our hits, we show, and we just play it over and over again, right? We need to record what's happening. For a month in the beginning, yes, we need to record this because there need to be witnesses, right? Now it's I need to catch this so I can get hits, I can get likes. Um, and and we have learned to glorify this because prior to that, we glorify tragedy when we no one feels comfortable watching Roots, but the reviews of Roots and how critics will review Roots, how critics will review movies that have like slavery in it. It was brilliantly done. It was um, wonderfully crafted, right? These type of words, and Black people are like, that's my great grandmama, right? My great 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 grandmama. Like this is uncomfortable to us because we're seeing modern day of this happening. So no, we don't want to see Roots every, what is Black History Month. We don't want to see Roots land for 48 hours because this is such a reminder. We're already traumatized already from walking down the streets and living this life. And then we also have to turn around and watch the killing and the murder of someone else over and over again. And when we talk about how, like, when you hear, oh, that's just so sad, right?
Mm.
It's so sad. And that's the response. And or if this was taken and somebody makes a movie out of it, something that was tragic. What was the movie that was I'm sorry, it's slipping me, but is it Fruitville Station?
You just have to describe the movie. I might have missed it. I
Yeah,
try not to watch the struggle movies.
it's pretty much about like somebody being a black man being killed
Mm.
um in at the train station, subway station,
Mm-hmm.
and by cops, right? And it's kind of one of the first times that they talk, you know, it's kind of being blasted like black men are being killed by cops, black men are being killed by cops. And the reviews I heard about the movie, I'm like, oh man, I want to see this. You know, it's a lot of reviews and it sounds really good. And when I watched it, I couldn't stop crying.
Mm.
Like, cause I'm like, there goes my brother. There goes my cousin. That could be my dad, right? Like, so I'm like, but how we see this, it now becomes glorified. And when I say glorified, it's like, it's just the tragedy um, that we tend to like project it over and over again. And the only thing we can say is whether it was a movie, it was that was great. That was such a great movie. It was so crafted really well. So it was written so well. But I'm like, this is based on a true story.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we do this? Right. Um, and then now we just tend to play it over in the news, like we were just saying. And it's like it's trauma, trauma, trauma
Yeah.
over and over again. So I hope it makes sense because I
Yeah.
feel like I said, I have 50 million things running in my head with that because I feel like we magnify it in the media. So
We absolutely do. And just thinking about some of these, I call them struggle movies. I think a lot of us do.
yeah.
It's like, man, how movies are generally for entertainment or some historical reenactment. You get to
Mhm.
relive D-Day or relive the Battle of, the British version of D-Day. I forget what it's called. And then it's like, but why do we have to, as black people, anyways? And I don't necessarily think that many people should relive like the darkest moments of slavery. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
good to read
Mm-hmm.
about it, good to know, good to have it taught.
Mm-hmm.
But is why is that entertainment?
It's
And I'm
entertainment.
not saying that there's like some crazy racist person out there being like, oh yeah, I love to see it. Maybe there is, but um, it is weird that this is entertainment. And I understand as somebody who does media and stuff that there's going to be that filmmaker who wants to tell certain stories, and you got to let them tell their stories. Um, but it's a little weird, and the
It
fact that
is.
it's lifted up and worshipped as like the next achievement of blackness is to
Mm-hmm.
show
Mm-hmm.
um, a black woman being defiled. Like I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Or seeing
Mm-hmm.
somebody hung or attacked. It's like I don't want to see that because now I start to internalize these things, and I can't look at people in the community that I love and I know love me the same, and it changes the way I look at life.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I did have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you think trauma can be passed down genetically?
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes, actually, there is research that shows, um, oh goodness, that a baby can experience a mother's trauma,
Hmm.
right? So I recently had this conversation, and just even like emotional trauma, if there's a lot of trauma around a child's birth, um, there is a lot of chemicals that's passed to the baby during that time.
Hmm.
If there's a lot of trauma while the mother is pregnant, there's a lot of chemicals that are passed to the baby during their time. So if the mother is in a place of distress throughout the pregnancy and throughout the delivery, it is going to be evident. A child is predisposed to more mental health disorders.
Yeah.
So we're talking bipolar, we're talking depression, and we're talking anxiety disorder, like chronic anxiety disorders.
Wow.
So one of the things that I know to ask, especially with my female clients, is I work mostly with adults, but and of course, most of my clients have trauma or some type of anxiety. But one of the things I ask in all my clients is, um, well, not all my female clients is, did you come on your cycle when you were born? I know that may be TMI, but that's a thing that female babies can actually bleed a little bit because there's an increased amount of I can't remember the name of the chemical, but if the parent was in distress.
Mm.
And so there's a likelihood that this child may develop anxiety disorder, attachment challenges, depression, just different things, that there's a predisposition that they could
Yeah.
develop disorders. And
So
so,
it's almost as if some of these kids that we see who are, and I'm not saying that just every kid who acts up is traumatized via their parents in the womb, but
mhm,
it's almost like, man, like maybe we should give a second look. Like, okay, these children are in a rough home environment, but what was the home environment like before they were there?
exactly, that should
Wow.
always be a good question. And so, even then, if we look at Black and Brown people that continually live in distressful situations, and we have post traumatic slave syndrome by Joy DeGroy, I believe that's her name. She has this whole book on that, and how it not only is it DNA, but it's cultural. How we treat our children, the generational lessons in which we learn to protect them.
Hmm.
But we tend to pick up how we tear down our children. We tend to pick up how we kind of have this sense of how we should govern ourselves throughout the day. That sense of Black masking, which is like, I'm good, I'm safe, nothing's going on with me, code switching.
Mm-hmm.
We say this is all cultural, but how do we pick it up so quick as children? You'll see little kids in elementary school, like literally in kindergarten, who can do it. They can go hang with their Black friends when they're in a group of Black friends and they'll play a certain way. But then if they go and play with white kids, you'll see a code switch happen real quick. And they didn't do it intentionally, but
Huh.
it's picked up just like that. So, I mean, is it genetic? Yeah, it's DNA. It happens. And it's also what we tend to do. We tend to nurture it
Mm-hmm.
in our culture,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
it's
we
a
do.
nurture and nature thing
Yeah.
that happens as we go throughout. But when it's also known, research knows that trauma can change the DNA of a person. And
Wow.
consistent complex trauma definitely changes the chemical makeup of a person because of the consistent cortisol and the different chemicals that are consistently being produced in a sense of fight or flight. If you're always in a sense of fight or flight, you have a larger quantity of chemicals in your body than the ones that calm you down, the ones that secrete when you're calm, when you feel safe, and when you feel secure.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of research on. So you,
Wow.
so yeah, that, and so if you're walking around with like the chemicals, then you're in a consistent state of fight or flight. Your baby get the same chemicals you get that you're producing. So your baby's born with fight or flight.
That's incredible. I can already tell that we need to already have a follow up conversation because this is getting real deep real quick, and I love it. I'm here for it. This is costly. This is what we do. We
Yeah.
keep it that way. Whoo! Thank you for expounding on that. And guys, if there's something that she touched on that you really want to hear more about, hit us up and we'll bring it up in our follow up conversation or in the um, Patreon exclusive conversation. We can get together. You can ask your questions personally. That said, let's talk about. I know earlier we talked about the cell phone thing and recording people getting hurt and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
recording people getting robbed, or even there is a situation where a woman was sexually assaulted on a train in front of people, and people watched for a good long time. I think it was like several minutes they just watched, and I'm not sure if anybody recorded, but it seems like we have this in psychology, they have a term for it, bystander syndrome, um,
Bystander. Mm-hmm.
bystander effect. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, what is happening? Because we've moved beyond like a simple bystander effect where we just kind of be like, somebody else will help and keep it moving.
Right.
But
Right.
now we've like, somebody else will help and I'm just going to record, and I feel justified in this because I'm preserving the evidence. and I'm
Mm-hmm.
fighting the power by getting up in the cop's face with my phone, which it seems like a bad idea. It really
It's
does.
a very bad idea.
I mean,
Doesn't help the
if
situation.
somebody with a firearm, anybody, seems to be on edge and feels that they have the right to protect themselves, for you to interject yourself physically and add additional variables like physical items, I just feel like that could get you killed. So be
Yeah.
smart. Be smart.
Mm-hmm. Be
Gosh.
smart. Be real smart. Like let's practice wisdom, people.
But let's talk a little bit about like why are people recording instead of helping? Because that woman who was assaulted on the train, instead of people like, like I said, bystander effect maybe, but it took several minutes before somebody who was actually like in charge of the train came to assist this woman.
Okay, so you know I don't watch the news, so oh my goodness.
It's horrible. I'm sorry if I hit you with a deep one real quick.
And at the same time, I'm like, I need to go find this video so I can really, oh my goodness,
I don't know that it
or
was a
article,
video, but
right?
I do
It
know
wasn't a
that.
video, so it was
I
an
hope not.
article
It was a
uh,
news article that I read.
that you read.
Yeah,
Okay, because I'm
with
like, was this something where like, okay, the psychology brain is coming out. So did she freeze? Was she quiet? Was this like one of these things where like people were watching, like, do you see what's happening right now?
hmm
Like, not like, is she fighting? Like, what was happening? And I'm not
people are
saying if she
confused.
was fighting or anything like that, like they should have, this shouldn't happen too. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
Like, I'm so just like, what is going on, first of all?
It's
But
horrifying.
it is horrifying because I don't think I could stand by and watch that. And I think I probably would have been more upset with the people recording than the people, you know what I'm saying? Than
Right.
like,
I mean, that's tends to be the
yeah, like,
case, where us people in for those who don't know, we're both um, card carrying members of the firearm community. We
yes.
conceal carry on a regular basis,
Mm-hmm.
teach and train all the different stuff. I'm not an instructor myself, but I do get involved in these things. That
Right.
said, it's like, man, like people in our sphere, we're all about like helping people and making sure that we're good and protecting,
Mm-hmm.
innocence.
Right.
But a
Right.
lot of people in society, we're quick to record. Like
We're
the
quick.
situation with George Floyd, God rest his soul. Um, a lot of people were recording, and thankfully so. But nobody was like, "Let me put my phone down and actually try to get involved." And I'm not saying go fight a cop because that seems like a bad idea. But
No.
what
But
was
I did see a
happening?
video where somebody did, and I can't say I wasn't like,
Oh,
because I was like, family. Like, because this dude really did tackle the police officer to the point where he knocked him over.
wow.
I was just like, whoa,
Well,
that was bold. So glad you didn't get killed, but you did get arrested. But that was bold because it was his girlfriend, and he was like, hey, because he was hitting his girlfriend. So, but
yeah.
back to
Jeez. Well, there goes three potential sponsors. Guys, go sponsor the show on Patreon so we can keep having constant conversations. Anyways,
so like, but I mean, I'm sorry. I'm
no,
sorry about that. But
no, no.
it was
That's an
interesting to see
important
that
part.
actually happen, right? Like
Yeah,
to
and
see
he
that
didn't just pull out his phone and be
because
like, "Don't touch my girl. I got
right,
you
but
on
somebody
tape."
else was recording
Somebody else
as
was.
they were literally about to beat this woman who's protesting.
Wow.
So the guy, he's like, no. And he comes and like straight manhandle him and like he flips off of her and everything. And then it was like the other cops picked her up, arrested her, and then like arrested him too. But
Okay.
like it stopped the beating.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it stopped the beating.
So in a
So
sense, maybe it needed
right.
to happen that way.
It needed to happen that way, right? But at the same time, we're talking about this person who's recording somebody about to get beat,
Right.
right? We're talking
Exactly.
about these people who's recording. And I think part of it could be the desensitization of our community, right? With um, social media, how this is now so often posted, right? The tragedy of the Black and Brown community is posted.
hmm
Like people getting pulled over, people being beat, riots happening, fights happening, right? Because we started out with recording fights and sharing them among the whole school and posting it
hmm
on the internet, right? So like that is what it's become. Like our mind frame is being changed through what is being publicized on social media.
Is there
So it
a
is shifting.
Is there like a shift that happens with one's overall self-esteem and how they view the world in context to themselves, in the sense that they can
Mm.
see these things happening and they feel like it's normal and natural. So therefore, it doesn't trigger that sense of self-respect. What
Urgency.
right when they see things happening, it's like, oh, that's kind of natural. Oh man, what's happening? Instead of feeling rage, they're more curious.
So I wouldn't say self-esteem, but I will say desensitization,
Okay.
right? Because there's this sense of danger effect that
Mm-hmm.
is being very minimized. So when they're seeing this happen, they're not seeing, oh my God, this woman is being assaulted, help her,
Yeah.
right? It's, oh my goodness, do you see what's happening? Am I saying the same thing? Right? The
Mm-hmm.
cognitive dissonance that's going on, you know that something dangerous is happening. You know it's something like this is outrageous. And at the same time, you go to record. So it's like a mix of bystander effect, right? Because like, well, this dude is bold enough to do this out in public. Should I get involved?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm record, right? Rather than going, oh my goodness, somebody call 911, somebody help me protect this person,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or somebody
Absolutely.
go get help. So, like, if you feel like you can't defend this person or you won't be able to take this person on, then usually the next step is screaming for help, right?
Yeah.
If I watch somebody get stabbed, I'm not jumping in. I'm not.
It's a bad
I'm not jumping
idea.
in. Right, but I can't say I haven't seen that either.
Mm.
Like, I've seen fights. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and I was in the city for a long time before we moved into the suburbs. And I went back to the city um, in my early 20s. So, like, watching this happen you're kind of like, oh my goodness. There's that shock and awe
Yeah.
that, like, oh my God. So, where I would have been like, somebody call 911, somebody help,
Yeah.
y'all stop that, right? This is me. um that urgency is not there anymore because what we have done, like I said, the continual playing of these videos all the time, having them on just repeat, it desensitizes the individual to urgency,
Yeah.
to danger. We no longer see danger. Like you said, there was a sense of normalcy in this. We should never be there.
So a lot of the movies that are extremely popular in quote unquote black culture, just name a
Mm-hmm.
movie that a kid from the 90s or 80s would have watched growing up, you know,
Boys in the Hood.
any of them.
Come on.
Any of them, literally any of them.
Right.
You see, like quite literally, gang culture. People get killed, people die, and sometimes in the most gruesome way. Like it's not even like,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, guy got shot and they disappear off screen. Like these people are
Yeah.
bleeding out. I mean, we,
Yeah.
we see some real stuff from like Spike Lee and different people making good movies, but yet it's depicting some really difficult stuff. And I
Yeah.
wonder if that actually either inadvertently or maybe advertently contributes to the desensitization of these young black kids
Yeah.
and really anyone
Yeah.
who consumes that kind of media.
Yeah. Um, I think that's a tough one, right? Because a movie is something you see once,
Mm-hmm.
twice, right?
Well,
You're not
did you
playing it
did
every
you
day.
see it? Did you see it once or twice, or is that the only VHS that you had? So you play that back every day. I'm from the '90s. This is
Is
what
this
we did.
personal experience?
This
We're
is what.
talking about.
Yeah, we didn't have cable
um,
growing up, so we just watched. We hit them
yes,
replays.
yeah, yeah. And I hear you, right? And at the same time, I think there is something about like watching a movie that was a movie,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the mind knows that this is a movie,
Mm-hmm.
this is fictitious,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've been trained that way. This is fictitious, this is a movie. Can people relate to it that live that lifestyle? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
right. And yet they know the urgency, they know the dangers that are out there. There's no normalizing that, right? I think, could that have contributed to it? Yes. Could it have opened up a door? And I would say more so that, like, did it open up a door to where we can tolerate it more,
Mm.
right? Because desensitization, which is stuff that I also work on when I'm doing like intensive trauma work, where I work with individuals of talking about their trauma detail by detail, hard hitting, experiencing the emotions, right? And then help also working with them to realize that there's still a lot they survived and the things that they did in urgency, the things that they did to protect themselves, right? So those are those pieces. And so we're flooding ourselves with that, um, where the desensitization happens, right? So they can talk about their trauma and they're not having a panic attack, they're not having flashbacks and X, Y, and Z. Is it normal? No, it happened in my life and it's a scar now that's healing. But what we're doing when we are playing videos back and back, like social media, your whole timeline is another person being beat, is another person being hit, another
Yeah.
person being shot, and that's the you see how like it's consistent
Yeah.
exposure, consistent
Yeah.
exposure.
I mean, I'll tell
So
you,
if
like the amount of literal, like actual real life people who I've seen get smoked on the internet, and not just more recently now that I'm in the Second Amendment community and there's a lot of that kind of content about just everywhere.
yeah,
But the amount of
mm-hmm.
people that I'm like, I'm watching this thing and oh, these people got into a fight, somebody's recording, and all of a sudden, bah, da, 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 and you're like, what happened? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, that person's really dead. That
yeah,
person really just went up and shot this person in the head and then walked
it,
away.
and walked away. Why is that okay? That is not okay,
Wow.
right? And
Yeah.
so the and so your response is, oh my God, did that just happen? Right. And for me, I'm like, I need a moment.
Yeah.
I need a moment. Why? Because I cannot continuously expose, I don't continuously expose myself to that,
Yeah.
right? But people who do will sit and record a woman being sexually assaulted because it's another thing to add to the timeline.
Yeah.
It's another like, and I don't think we recognize that impact where we are when we entertain ourselves with stuff, we act like what we entertain ourselves with consistently. What are you exposing yourself with consistently? Right. And so, and I always talk to my clients about that type of stuff too, because it's like you need a break. You need a break from social media.
Yeah, you do.
You need a break.
You do.
So,
I mean, there's
yeah.
some really weird stuff. I remember there was this case couple not that long ago, maybe 2 years ago, of these three teenagers who basically kidnapped this special needs kid and was basically torturing him and live streamed the whole thing. And it's like, how does this happen? Like, okay, first, you guys are sick. Secondly, how do people just tune
Saw,
in?
Saw.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I said, it opens doors.
yeah.
Some of these movies are open doors.
And
What's
when you're too
what's the
young,
other movie?
when
You're
you have
too
like two
young.
year kids that are 2 years old who cannot discern like real from fake, the kids who are literally talking to the television because they think it's real. Like, does that you think that could have an impact?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. It
I thought
starts
so.
young, right?
Yeah.
So there's this thing of magical thinking where we think things happen. We think things happen because we made it happen, whether
Mm.
because I was angry or they were mad at me. When kids who are young and their parents divorced, they think daddy left home or mommy left home because I was acting up that day, but
Wow.
not able to recognize the discord that was continuously happening between their parents, right? So when we're exposing ourselves to things like this at a young age, we tend to take it in as something normal, as something we can do. What's the movie? And I have yet to see one of these movies, but it's like 24 hours, you can kill somebody or
The
something like that,
purge.
do
Yeah.
whatever. The Purge, right?
Hmm.
So this is what you were just talking about. They're torturing this person, they're streaming live. Are we serious right now? So like I would not have been able to watch even 1 minute of that not even movie, but
That real life event.
yeah, that real life event.
Yeah.
But because it's social media, there's such a disconnect too, right? We talk about the invisibility piece when we post things on social media, but don't want anybody to say anything personally about you, where you just put out your personal business.
Yeah.
But there's this false sense of invincibility that happens. So there's a disconnect too.
There
There's an
is.
emotional disconnect that happens, which is all that also allows that desensitization to increase because there's an emotional disconnect.
Wow. Now I've been seeing that emotional disconnect, and not only necessarily the black community, and that's kind of where we see it, I suppose, the most.
Mm.
And I know we started talking about the news, and we kind of got into
Yeah,
these things,
it's all
but
good. Yeah,
kind of circling back to the news, as you know, like maybe someone will tune into this in years and find out, oh man, they were still talking about COVID. Yes, it's 2022 and we're still talking about COVID. Okay, like I've had it. I think I'm good, but the CDC would tell me otherwise. That said,
right.
that said, I've been seeing some weird stuff. I've been seeing there was like a poll or a study that came out this, and it was like a liberals versus conservatives type thing, and talking like, man, and apparently there is, I guess, people who would consider themselves left leaning
Mm-hmm.
approved or said that they would be okay with people who are not vaccinated being put into camps of
Oh,
sorts to, I guess, in like a forced quarantine.
yeah.
And I'm like, dang, like, how did we get here? How did we get here? Because that just sounds like, just on its face, it sounds bad. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think I have to say that twice.
Yeah.
How did we get here?
It's
I'm so confused.
it um that is very disturbing. And I think I recently read an article and watched a short video about it. Like, and I was just like, are we really thinking this? Right? Like, what are we doing? But I think it would go back to that whole fear factor, right? Like we're projecting this sense of fear, right? When you have consistent news reiterating that this pandemic is the unvaccinated pandemic. Now all of a sudden it's the unvaccinated pandemic, right? Like
Yeah.
this is what it is, right? They are still perpetuating it, right? Um, and and yet all the evidence still shows different, right? Like
It shows something
the
of which
vaccine.
I don't have many opinions, because if you
I
have an
don't have
opinion,
many
they'll take you
opinions on
down.
it.
But
Right, right. So, and so this is the other thing. I don't have a lot of those conversations with people, right? You know, my clients are trying to slip it in there, like, are you vaccinated? And it's like, I don't share my medical information, especially with my client. That's unethical.
it is unethical, first of all. And but a lot of families are having these conversations. You want to come to Thanksgiving dinner? Hey, did you have
Yeah.
you are
Mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm,
and it's not
mm-hmm,
just, and I'm not going to say that on the flip side, for those who maybe haven't, rather not, are still undecided,
mm-hmm,
saying
mm-hmm.
to people who are like, oh, don't come around me, even though
Right.
that was a thing that was
That was a
happening at
thing.
one point, where people
Yeah.
were saying like, oh, this stuff is shedding on us and is giving us symptoms and different things like that if you're around.
Yeah.
And I think that fear is so powerful.
It is that fear
It's
factor
incredible.
when the news is, or just the news or any special report.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say when there is special reports that come out from leadership. Let's just say that when and that's projecting fear.
Mm-hmm.
That's projecting when you say certain people are stupid for not or for doing or not doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you use certain terminology as that, and um and even in social psych, they'll tell you if you trust a specific leader or a specific speaker, you are going to take on their perspective about a topic,
Yep.
right? So if not in case the other side can be has more credentials, more persuasive, or you can connect with them on some other level that's personal,
Mm-hmm.
right? That can actually change your mind and how you view things, right? Or your decisions on things. So it's research all about that too. Social psych, love it, absolutely love it. And I can always see it happening. Um, but why are we okay with concentration camps?
I mean, just call it by its name. Spades are spades are spades.
Spade a spade, right? Why are we okay with that? Because I mean, Hitler did it well.
I mean, he made a
How
lot
did,
of people
how
cool
did
with it.
he? How? Because how did he describe Jews? Dirty,
Hmm.
filthy, contagious, right?
Thieves.
Thieves. So when you describe people that way, and it may not be true, but if the pandemic is still going on and it's not broken, then it must be true because I trust this individual or because this person passed this on my behalf or I relate to this person because they had a similar experience, right? So that is how things actually unfold. Why are we okay with this? And honestly, I'm big advocate on do your own research, make your own decisions. Let's
Hmm.
practice wisdom, not just go off of what other people say.
Now, there's been an interesting thing that's come out where I somewhat agree with the statement like how many people are actually doing research, not just how many people go on Google and read two articles, or how many people say I'm doing research and don't actually do anything because they're kind of lazy. I get that. I can be lazy
Mm-hmm.
too, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, how many? Like, where are you getting this research? Are you reading like a news article, or are you reading some peer reviewed? I mean, you've got you went to school for psychology. You understand. I've
Mm-hmm.
been to college. You know, when you're writing those papers in APA format, and they've got to have at least peer reviewed in the last 2 years by
10 or 5 or yeah.
exactly. And it's like, do
Yeah.
you first of all, do you know how to do research? And I'm not saying that you're not an adult and can't make your own decisions and live with the
Yeah.
results of these decisions, but so I'm struggling to talk, the results of these decisions. But at the end of the day, you do have to make this decision. And the fact that I'm seeing so many people mock this thing called research without actually knowing the case by case basis of what this research actually entails, if that
Mm-hmm.
person chooses to tell you, and if they don't tell you, that's, I'm sorry, it's not your business at the end of the day. At the end of the day.
Right. And so even as you're talking, I'm sitting here like we're in a pandemic. So that means there's the world is involved. So we just doing so we're not an American demic.
Mm,
So we're just focusing on American information,
that's true.
right? So
I mean, the
so
South
like
African situation where they, you know, it's almost something interesting happened, and I don't mean to make the whole show about COVIDs, but excuse me, that's something I heard somebody say one time, and it stuck with me. Um, I don't mean to make the show about COVID, but it's interesting because they were like, "Yo, like, don't." When South Africa said like, "Hey, we found a new variant, but please don't like hit us with a travel ban because if you do that, it's going to make other people hesitant to share information and actual research with you
mhm.
as they discover new stuff." And as you said, this is a worldwide thing. Like this isn't just it's an epidemic down in Asia. No, no, no. This is a pandemic
It's a world, it's a
worldwide.
pandemic. So,
I think we should share information. I think we should allow people to access research to figure stuff
mhm.
out. I think you
Yeah.
should have conversations that don't result in like you're not invited to Thanksgiving. Um, and
Conversations that are conversations too. Like that's
yeah,
really
like
important.
real
Because that could be
conversations.
your research right there.
Hmm.
Asking people what's their experience
I
been. How
have
many
friends who
people
work at
had
Pfizer.
it?
Like, I have people working at these places. I have friends who work and they're attorneys and they do this and this and that and they study these things, and it's like, okay, like I can make informed decisions. And at the end of the day, you have to trust your gut. And if you are, I'm gonna say spiritual, or if you believe in God, like
Yeah.
ask God, you know,
Ask God.
figure
Pray.
it out,
Yeah.
figure figure it out.
Seek that wisdom. Seek that divine wisdom.
Right, and I think people just this thing is crazy. I'm tired of talking about it. Hopefully, if you heard what I said so far, you either understand or you don't. We don't have to agree. We don't have to agree.
Yeah.
We don't have to agree.
We don't.
But you will respect me. I'm just kidding. You don't even have to do that much. It's your choice, friend. Um, let's shift gears a little bit, unless you had something else you wanted to add.
No, I think that we kind of did that one.
Yeah, we definitely did. Let's talk about firearms. That's kind of like a thing that we do on the low.
Yeah.
Like we don't talk about
Mm-hmm.
it much, but we're both into firearms.
Mm-hmm.
You, what's your association affiliation with the firearms world and the community at large?
Yeah. So I recently became a firearm instructor last year.
Very cool.
So yeah, and it's funny. I've always wanted to kind of get into the sport of firearms, and so and then when I was like, oh wait, I can actually become a firearm instructor. That's pretty cool. Last year was one of those things where we're not only talking about the pandemic, right, but we're also talking about the pandemic of Black and Brown people being killed on the left and right, and the racism that's going on and the
Right.
injustices. So I think it was kind of that final push for me to be like, you know what? This is something that I feel like I need to step into,
Hmm.
especially for Black women. Um, and I know there's such a stigma.
Why?
Well,
Not the stigma, but you said especially for Black women, and I've talked to people who would
oh,
say like, why does it matter? Why can't? I mean, do they have to learn from a Black woman? Like, can't they get
oh,
information
there's
from anybody? Like,
they can, right? But we also know that women are treated differently, you know,
okay,
and
I
and that's
think
something I
we would
have been
agree
learning.
that women do have a little bit of a an issue at times.
Yeah.
Um, Not every single woman, because there's great male instructors who can treat women perfectly fine.
Yes, yes, because my instructor is male. And so I felt very comfortable with him when I took a class with him and when I took the CPL and then also with becoming a firearm instructor, right? Um, so there was this sense of, I guess, also of me being a psychologist and working with women who've experienced trauma, also being a Black woman who grew up in the hood of Baltimore, Maryland, and seeing the need for self defense,
Hmm.
the need for self defense, and also feeling comfortable with defending yourself, feeling confident and capable in self-defense. I think it speaks to a lot of the Black woman that is often ostracized, abused, bottom of the totem pole, kind of, a sense of like, not only I want to build them up with being able to use firearms, but just self-defense and confidence to walk. And now, granted, I'm not saying we don't have confidence because we do. We set the trend many a times, right?
Hmm.
And we are becoming more and more confident in our appearance and in our talents. And at the same time, a lot of us still struggle in defending ourselves, right? We may know how to do it in the work environment, corporate America, and but on the streets, it's a different story. And I felt it. Like, I mean, granted, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, so I'm like, I know how to, govern myself in the hood. When I walk in the hood, it's a whole different story. You're gonna see Baltimore when I'm walking the streets of the hood, and you're not gonna see Baltimore when I'm in the corporate world, right? So
Right.
like, I know how to vacillate between the worlds, but not all of us know how to do that. And I'm like, even if I'm walking down a white neighborhood and I gotta defend myself, I'm gonna feel okay that I can.
Right. Absolutely. You have to.
Where other Black women may not.
Hmm.
We feel like we need to submit just to save our lives. No, time out for that too.
Right. You said so much there, and at times I'm tempted to ask you to, I suppose, explain certain situations,
Mm-hmm.
and I think sometimes we're so tired of explaining certain stuff because it's like when you say like Black women are at the bottom of the totem pole, I'm like, I understand that. I don't necessarily walk through my days believing certain things or just, I guess, putting that at the front of my mind because my wife is Black, my daughter's Black, my other
Mm-hmm.
daughter who's going to be here this week. She's black too, and it's the question. At least I hope she's black, right? um,
No, don't need to see you.
I'm playing. Oh, I'm gonna have to clip that
Yeah, I say I love you, honey.
out. I love you. Anyways, so she don't watch the show anyways. But
Okay.
um, that said, like back to the serious one, you say, black women are these things, and I'm like, but I don't look at y'all like that. When I say y'all, women who are black, obviously or not even obviously, who call themselves that, who believe that, who maybe fall into the categories of black culture or not, like it. If you got melanin in your skin, deep or not, like I see you as perfectly capable human beings. Now, the content of your character, I will judge you upon that. Like if you ratchet like 24/7, then you ratchet. Like that's what you are. Like I can't help you.
Yeah.
Like she don't want to be saved. Like it's okay, but it is what it is. But if you have any sort of self-respect, if you're trying, even I work with kids all the time, so you run across young girls who are in their teenage years who are trying to find their identity, and it's like I have all this anger and aggression. If they are that person, because there's a lot of girls who don't have that issue. If they have this anger and aggression, it's like, how do I show you care and make sure to put other great women around you to make sure that you are growing into the woman that you can become, and not become that bottom of the totem pole thing that we all talk about, where personally, my opinions on things like, black hair and things like that were for many, many years. And I still have friends who are white who don't understand why black women struggle with feeling like their hair is okay and different things like that. And I think we're starting to come out of that phase where every black girl feels like they got to press their hair or perm it or permanently damage it, all these different things. It's a long conversation.
Right.
Go do some research.
Yeah.
But going into like, okay, we're coming into our own. I feel like we've grown, and I personally don't see black women as anything less than amazing. Why do you feel comfortable using that term, bottom of the totem pole, and things like that when describing yourself, Dr. Max?
I think because I've been able to kind of walk in these different environments to see how people look at me and to experience how they will put value on me, but I won't accept it, right? So I'm also a consultant. So being a consultant, I have to negotiate my value and why you should pay me what my quote is, right? And even so, when I walk into a firearm store, why you should not talk to me as if this is my first time walking into a firearm store, and to acknowledge the knowledge that I have, right? And I've walked into, and they're my go-to stores, right, where people are starting to get to know me. But I'm also a person who tends to do a lot of research before I walk into a store, right? Or I'm going to ask you a lot of questions because I want to learn a lot of stuff. But don't play me as if I'm uneducated, because I'm going to hear what you're going to say, and I'm going to challenge you with what you just said. So
I don't mean to cut you off, but I think the comment or the thought might be, if somebody who doesn't understand your experience, whether it be black, white, or otherwise, hears you say that, it's be like, well, statistically, black women aren't really the main population of dudes who walk into, when I say dudes, people who walk into gun stores. So and perhaps many of the people who have the first time gun owners of the pandemic, first generation gun owners of really anybody here, they walk in, they really don't know nothing. Like they look at a Sky or a High Point and they say, what's the least expensive thing in here? Give me that.
Right.
Which everybody in guns knows. If you know guns, the least expensive gun is the worst thing you can potentially do for yourself. It's like buying the least expensive car. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Respect
And
yourself.
even when somebody, right? And but there you go, right? We don't that even talks about that, right? Like we even talk about that because we settle for stuff,
Hmm.
right? And that's not all Black women, right?
It's
But
not. It's not. Let's not
right.
play.
And so, but there's this sense of we should be happy. We
Right.
should settle, right? This is where I mean by bottom of the totem pole because we're treated like that. You should, when we get paid and we get a raise and we look at like across the board, Black women who get raises, Black women who get promotions, Black women in just in different categories, are they looked over more, right? Because that can go from if she wearing braids all the time, is she fit in the mold, is she,
Hmm.
is she, does she have to stroke the ego, like all the different things that like, what is our twice as hard look like, right?
Right.
Because for Black women, our twice as hard is different than for Black men twice as hard,
I
right?
would say there's a big
Like,
difference in the sense that
right.
if a black dude looks the part, nice haircut, good build, speaks well enough, has knowledge on a thing, um,
Mm-hmm.
if not for this value, these values, or at least he's nice on
Mm-hmm.
the eyes, or
Mm-hmm.
he's a kind guy, he's a big guy, so at least we
Mm-hmm.
feel secure, or things like
Mm-hmm.
that, or he's very, he's not like the others, so things like that,
Mm-hmm.
weird stuff, and just to kind of, I've been in hiring positions, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I've recognized certain things that are expected of people who hire, and
Mm-hmm.
really thinking about it, I'm like, dang, that's kind of sad. Like the amount of leeway given for certain things. Like we in white corporate environments, and I hate making it about race. In white corporate environments, we kind of expect certain things, and outside that, maybe it's fine. But here, we need you to look this way, and if you don't look that way, act this way, and if you don't act perfectly in that way, act this way. You don't
Mm-hmm.
do all those things well. All right, well, it doesn't matter that you're really actually really really good. It's not going to work. Um,
Yeah.
and like you said, twice as hard looks a little different. And I feel like I didn't explain all that super well, but hopefully somebody gets what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it is kind of rough.
Yeah. And I mean, and so like, I mean, now I don't think of myself as bottom of the totem pole,
Good.
but I'm also in this place now where I own my own business. I call the shots, this is what it is, and I'm not settling, right? Unless I choose to settle because there's a reason why I choose to. Okay, I'll go for the lower price, but there's an alternative reason for me,
Hmm.
right? It's not to make them feel happy.
I
It's not
do
to put them.
I do wonder if you run into issues of women in general feel that they're not, and according to certain research will say that they're not paid the same. Black women would reference the same research and additional research to say like we're not even paid the same. And I would ask the question like, are y'all being aggressive? Like you admitted that you're aggressive with your pricing. You make sure to go get it, and you're not going to leave money on the table unless you choose to, and that's
Mm-hmm.
cool. But I've had situations where I've had to tell women, specifically black women, like, oh, they offered you that? Well, that's what they offered me, and I have way less education than you. So you need to go back to them and let them know that hey, I got this master's
Mm-hmm.
degree. You should pay me like a person who has a whole degree, and not like this other guy who, you know,
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah.
So like, I think that's important, and I'm not saying that that's intentional, but you can
Mm-mm.
ask, and I wonder if you have not because you ask not, and I wonder if it's that situation or if it's something else.
So I think yes, that can be part of it. The other part of it is, do you know?
Hmm.
Because we don't
Ooh.
have that exposure,
Say it
right? You don't
again.
have that exposure, right? You don't know that like, wait a minute, I just got paid the same amount as a bachelor's degree, right? Because the thing is, what you know that that's more than what you've been paid
Mm-hmm.
before, like
Mm-hmm.
yourself, right? So like when
You
I
think people
first
doing you a
started
favor?
working, exactly. Or no, like when I finally got licensed, and because that's a pay difference too, right? When I got a PhD and I'm still considered master's level because I have a master's level license, and then I get my doctoral level license after I pass the doctoral level exam. There's a huge jump there, right? But did I know that, like, hey, you can negotiate for more because you have this specialty and you're African American in a predominantly white place. Like, they really want you, they're gonna pay more, right?
They should.
So like, but I
You're in
didn't know.
demand.
You right now I know I'm in demand,
Right.
but at the
I'm not saying
time,
they should pay you more because you black, so they should pay you more reparations. But like, I mean, that's fun and all, but like, now,
I mean that's true too. So I mean,
it's like, eh. but but I'm saying, like, for people who are in demand, like, oh, you bilingual? Oh yeah, we
right.
definitely, because we don't have that here. We need that. It's an additional skill, and I think unless you have a business owner mentality, um,
Mm-hmm.
you're not gonna win. Like, you
You're
are gonna
not.
be somebody's employee, and I'll leave it at that, all
Mm-hmm.
the days of your
Yeah,
life.
right. But the thing is, do you have the exposure to know? So I think that's the other thing about the Black community, Black women, the Black community, that like if we don't know what the actual competition is, what the salary range
Hmm.
is for your skill, if you're not exposed to that, if you're not in the know, you will take what's given to you rather than negotiate what you think you deserve, what you want. You know, we don't know, and so that, I mean, that I fell victim to that because I didn't know,
Right.
and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that, because the other thing, that's the most I've ever made. That's the most
Are you the first
anybody in
PhD in
my
your
family
family?
has ever made, right? Huh?
Are you the first PhD in your family?
First PhD, first college, first one out of my siblings to graduate high school, right? So I'm like first gen, all these things, and I have these friends, but that's the
Should
other
have
thing
known.
Black people don't talk about. We don't talk about money.
Mm,
We don't share what we making. We don't share, right? Because it's there. Unfortunately, sometimes there's competition among us, right?
yeah.
And I didn't have too many people to also reference and be like, how much should I be getting paid or how much should I be asking for? So that was the most money I had ever made until I started making that level of money and talking to people who were making that level of money and more. And then
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wait a minute, what?
Yeah. I actually
That
ran into
like
that with my white female boss when I was working at my last corporate job. And she was like, she thought she was making pretty good money. And then she found out that the manager up the store, because it was a chain of stores, was
mm-hmm.
making like a good couple thousand more than her. And it was like, you thought, you thought she was your boss's
Right.
favorite.
Right,
You
exactly.
thought, but
Hmm.
it's crazy because it's not just one thing or another. That can apply to men as well. So hopefully, if there's dudes listening, and most of the audience is
Hmm.
dudes, so if you're still
Yeah,
here, um, figure out what the game actually is, because people aren't just going to
yeah.
give it to you. Why should your boss pay you more? If they could pay you less, they would. So,
They can pocket it. Call it a
right,
day.
that's
Yeah,
a capital gains. Like, come
yeah,
on.
pretty much.
So that said, I'm I'm glad we had this part of the conversation. I know there's probably a few more things we could touch on, especially regarding, I guess, how you see yourself. And golly,
Mhm.
how did we get here? We were talking about the
We
firearms
were talking
experience.
about what made me get into firearms,
Yes,
and
I'm
yes,
so
yes.
sorry, guys. We
Uh,
went on a
yeah,
trail, but it's good. I like it. If you don't like it, I'm sorry.
yeah,
But
yeah,
let's
that's
talk about
fine.
firearms. You got
So
into firearms.
I got into firearms, and so, like I said, I wanted to especially teach women
Okay.
because women self-defense and everything. And I'm coming from like this background of sexual assault, like not me, but I
Thank
was a
God.
DC rape Christian, huh?
I said thank God.
Thank God. Yes, yes. DC Rape Crisis Center. I was an advocate for that. So, kind of going throughout college, I've always kind of worked in trauma, and just hearing all the types of stories when you meet a survivor at the hospital after being sexually assaulted,
Oh
right?
my
And like,
goodness.
and you're just thinking like, oh my God, how could this happen, right? Well, how could their friends let this happen to this person, or what was going on? So, and then kind of working also in the field and working with survivors as clients, there's this just heart for me to help women in understanding safety, right? Um, yeah, just the safety and being able to defend yourself.
Do you think the firearm
And
is the best tool for a woman to defend herself in a situation where sexual assault may occur?
it depends. And I think that that depends on the situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we're walking down the street, somebody's still progressing towards me and they're not backing up, and I see that they have an intent, then firearm might be the best tool. However, if I'm in a situation where I'm with a friend, because most sexual assaults happen with somebody you know who are in close proximity,
Wow.
so you might end up using a knife or brass knuckles, or because it's close range, right? So you may not even have access to your firearm at the time when you are sitting next to somebody you think is really cool.
Yeah.
So but the biggest thing for me is also the mentality behind that, right? So I am very big on, like, where do you know your state of your mind at the time of any situation, because that's going to help you get out of situations. That's going to help you assess a situation. Is this really dangerous? This is going to help you also make a decision and get that way of escape,
Mm.
right? So assessing your state of mind and knowing where you are is big. And like that's one of the things that even when I teach, and we talk about like code white, code orange, code yellow, code red. Like when I'm teaching that, I'm also teaching like the state of your mind,
Mm-hmm.
because we talk about just awareness, but where's your state of mind? So I think that's a really important piece, because I think that's the number one weapon. Where are you? How are you going? Are you aware of what are you feeling? Do you feel like you're even capable of like defending yourself? Do you feel like you should really be going out tonight if you're just so distraught by something? Like all these different things that we should be mindful of, that I think we don't. Even with men, like when I'm teaching men, and of course most of the time the classes are mixed, so I will even kind of call out men, if you are angry with your woman and you just left the house and you have a firearm on you and you're walking down the street and somebody bumps into you and you get into an argument, 9 chances out of 10, you're likely going to end up using that firearm because you're already in a state of mind
Mm-hmm.
that's defensive.
Yeah.
You're already defensive. You can't even really truly assess the situation for what it is, right? So like being just aware of your mindset, because when you have a firearm, that's a lot of responsibility.
A ton.
Ton.
Yeah.
So I want women to, so you know, um, I want women to not just know how to use firearms, because at the same time, they could be with their man. That's the same thing. Okay, perfect example. My mom, when I was 16, 15, 16, driving cars, right? So Peggy King, I always call her out. She's like, you're going to learn how to change a tire. You're going to learn how to check your oil. You're also going to learn how to drive a stick. Because if your boyfriend ain't feeling good, something happened to him, whatever, da 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 da, and he got a stick, how you gonna get home? How you gonna get to emergency, right? Same thing with a firearm. So if something is happening and you're being attacked, or you get your hands on a firearm and you might not be carrying, but your boyfriend be carrying, he down, they coming after you, you right next to him, you grab that firearm and you know how to use it. Protect yourself, right? So like I think about all those type of things
Mm-hmm.
that women should, even if you, or even at home defense. I'm real big on home defense. So it's like knowing how to walk through your house in the dark. Where are things at? Knowing how to walk through, like I can get go to the bathroom in the dark and have no problem bumping into anything because I know where things are in my place,
It's pretty
right?
good.
So, right, that type of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the type of things that I think about when I got into becoming a firearm instructor. Because first I was like, this is gonna be cool. I want to teach people how to shoot. I love being able to kind of do this, do a sport. And then when I actually sat down in the law part, when we had to listen to that whole video of like the responsibility to law, it was just like, Oh, we have rights. You mean to tell me I can do this? But wait, we're uneducated on our rights of firearms too. So then that's the other thing why I wanted to teach. Like we don't know. We don't know. And we're losing cases. We're getting arrested for having a firearm. Your firearm is registered, but guess what? You still got booked.
Or
Like
something.
on
Now,
something,
now
right?
you're
Like
jacked up in legal jeopardy. If you didn't have money, now you're spending money.
exactly.
And
But
there's
knowing your rights.
absolutely knowing your rights. And there are so many crazy things that come with that. No, keep going, keep going.
So I mean, but those are the things that inspire me to be like, I want to educate the Black community. I want to educate those who don't know. Like we have the right to have a firearm. Guess what? You can buy a firearm for your house. And yes, you can take it to the shooting range and don't have to be tripping about having a gun in the car as long as you do it the right way.
Right.
Right? Like maybe you don't want to carry a gun, but you do have a right to have one in your home.
You know what I think is not good, especially kind of being around not just uneducated black shooters, but uneducated people in general who really have no idea how to interact with a firearm, how bullets interact with the world, and
Mm-hmm.
saying
Mm-hmm.
stuff like, somebody's kicking down your door, you just shoot through the door, and people don't generally say stuff like that, but when you hear it, it's alarming. Or the infamous, "Don't worry, it's not loaded." I lose my mind every time. Do you not understand how these things work? Do you not
Yes.
understand sympathetic responses and fingers on the trigger and things can happen and now people are
Right.
dead? It's happened. I've
Right.
seen videos. It happens. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
definitely knowing your rights and knowing what you don't have a right to do in this
Mm-hmm.
state, this county, this country in regards to
Mm-hmm.
firearms. What'll get you
Mm-hmm.
arrested? What'll get you killed? Because and I get tired of hearing these things that um, and forgive me if this offends somebody, but um, there seems to be, I guess, this mindset with a lot of black folks where they feel like they can't do certain things, like you suggested earlier, like we can't have guns because that'll get you killed, that'll make you a target for the police. Maybe, maybe not. I don't care.
Right.
What I need to know is that I'm good in case that something bad happens.
Mm-hmm.
I can take care of business. So
Right.
hearing like, oh well, I can't do that, or the like treating information or treating myths in the black community like they're facts. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, you get caught with a gun in the car, you're going to jail. So
Right.
now you're in a shootout with the police, and it's like, bro, like why?
Why?
You had a perfectly legal. You bought that thing straight up. It's not a stolen gun. Like why are you in a, and I'm exaggerating a little bit because I don't know of
No,
that
but that's
specific incident,
true.
but like why are we freaking out? Why are we running? Why were you running? Oh well, I mean I had a gun. Oh okay, cool. This looks normal, but you ran, so now we got to find something.
So now you look guilty, right? So you're making
Right,
yourself look guilty,
right, right,
right?
and it's
And,
just
and you're
stuff like
actually
that.
running out of fear,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Fear for what?
And but but
Lack of
because
knowledge.
we have okay, so that's the underlying thing, right? That's the but what we think about we're running because we're always running for our lives because of historically
Mm-hmm.
police officers have always harassed us and beat us and all that stuff and find a way to kind of like get us in jail, right? So
Right,
that's what we're running for. But then there's like guilt for owning a firearm, a legal firearm,
right.
like So like this is what society has actually done to the Black and Brown community. They have really the yeah. It does. It worked. It worked because we are afraid to live according to our rights.
I mean, you look at slave codes, black codes, Jim Crow, everything. Like I don't have to pull out a textbook to let any regular gun guy know that there have been issues with gun rights in the black communities. Even if you look at a lot of blue
Mm-hmm.
states having really, or inner cities rather, having super
Mm-hmm.
serious gun laws.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
essence, maybe I kind of understand. It's like, well, you want to try to curve crime, and crime is hurting mothers and children and things like that. And there's
Yeah.
bullets flying and busting through windows. And I mean,
Right.
if you're from the city, like when you're watching TV and gunshots, you just sit on the floor and watch TV. Like that's a thing. But
That is a thing.
it's horrible. Like it don't. I'm talking real
Yeah.
flippantly. It's horrible. Like
Right.
so I get that there will be stricter gun laws in places like that, but is disproportionately affecting Black people again. And now you
Mm-hmm.
have large swaths of the population getting picked up for gun charges and all these different things. We got people who literally have no criminal record. 21 can buy a gun, buying guns illegally. Why? Just buy a gun.
Yeah, just buy a gun. But it's because that fear of what it's like the Jim Crow laws, all that stuff, the
Mm-hmm.
myths that we believe we've made it fact. So if I go into a gun store and ask for a gun, they might call the cops on me or something like that. Like just
Right.
random stuff that these myths that we tend to believe, or it's going to be reported. So now the cops going to be watching me, right? Like
Something wild like that.
something wild like that.
Yeah.
And growing up in the city, I know the type of things people think, and you're sitting there like, bro, it's not that serious. But I also know the life that they were living too,
Yeah.
right? So who's the person that's telling? First of all, that's the other thing. Who's the person that told you that? Is this a criminal that told you that? Is this a person who was owning an illegal firearm that told you that? Is this a person who's out there doing crazy stuff and illegal stuff that's telling you that you don't want to own no firearm, they're gonna be on you? Well, what are we asking questions?
Mm.
And it goes all the way back to, are we educating ourselves? Are you doing your research? Right. So it just sometimes it's just challenge what's being said to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and that is what drove me when I saw that video of like, because I already knew I was going to own a firearm. I had this whole idea as a kid that I was going to get a silver gun with blue handle, all this stuff. I always said I was going to have all this. Yeah, that was so 80s 80s 90s. I know I look young, but
Forgive my face if it seems judgmental.
you can judge it. You can judge it because I don't have one.
Oh, good.
But
Thank God.
but you know, and it was just like, but growing up and just learning more about like, oh wow, okay, cool, this is real cool,
Yeah.
and like understanding the truth, the law. I wanted to share that,
Yeah.
and that was the biggest thing. And then the other piece with like women in self-defense and how like this is doable. So yeah.
That's powerful, man. That's how you got into it. What are you doing now? You teaching classes? Like, what's next?
Teaching classes. I'm hoping to kind of develop a 2-day training. Tactical social worker. I love her. I don't know if you guys follow her or anything like that. If you
I know her.
don't, follow her. She's awesome. She does this 2-day of boundaries. One day is based on boundaries, and then the other day is like firearm instruction. And I didn't notice that she was doing that for some time until she like advertised it. But I had like this whole thing in my head where I was just like, hey, I want to develop this, kind of one day of just like self-defense and confidence and boundaries type of thing, right? The mental aspect, and then doing the mental psychological aspect, and then doing firearm the next day when you get a CPO. And when I found her, and I found that she was doing these things, I was like, oh, shucks, I got to connect with her. So honestly, I'm working on developing a program like that. Excuse me. So I'm working on developing something like that. But right now, I am just teaching CPL classes, doing some private gun sessions. 1 second.
Yeah, that actually sounds really cool. I mean, and I think people have a big issue with like, oh man, you have a class that's just like someone else's class. You're copying their class, and why you stay in your lane? And I've actually seen this in certain people in the firearms community getting freaked out, like, oh, this is my market. Stay in your lane. Bump all that, like, bro, like, there's enough people in America
Yeah.
to teach everybody the same exact class twice, like.
Yeah.
And like get out there and share this information.
Not just that.
Do good ideas.
Partner.
Yes. Collaborate.
Like I went down and I did an individual training with her. Like she trained me. I allowed her.
And you didn't even tell me you were in
like,
Texas. I'm still salty.
I know. I completely forgot.
I'm genuinely hurt.
Blame it on the COVID brain. I still deal with brain fog and forgetfulness and all that
Me
stuff.
too,
So
but it's just because I'm dumb. I'm playing. I'm smart. I speak well
yeah,
about myself. Self talk is important.
yeah. I
So,
mean, but one of the things I learned is that's the other thing that I'm learning even in this community because I mentioned before when we were planning this is that I'm new to this, right? So
yeah,
like I I'm not going to sit up here and do all this. Like I know the game. I know how this goes. I mean, granted, I can develop something. I'm educated enough to research it and develop something and make it happen.
hmm,
And I make it happen in Michigan and then find out that somebody in Texas is already doing it. I can connect with her, get some pointers from her because I don't want to take her gig, right? But I can get some pointers with her, collab with her, and then what is on my heart and develop something, right? And just kind of integrate. And she's already talked about, like, we've already talked about, man, if I can get you to come up here and, we can do this together,
yeah.
then so be it, right? And so that's where I'm at because I'm like, I'm all about connecting with other people and doing this. Like we don't have to do it by ourselves,
Right.
especially, you know, if it's already
I'll
happening.
say this. I think it's really interesting that sometimes we don't think as true business owners think, which is forward. Like, because you can have a
Mm-hmm.
class and you can have a curriculum per se. Well, why aren't you at a point where you can sell your curriculum?
Mm,
Why aren't you
that's
doing
real.
that? I mean, it sounds like you just want to have something for yourself and keep working for the
Mm-hmm.
rest of your life. How about that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No,
sell
that's real. That's
sell your
real right there.
curriculum. Like, bro, like what are
Yeah.
you doing?
Yeah. I mean, because that's what USCCA,
Mhm. But and
right?
they
Like,
own this space. I mean,
yeah.
and we talk about many things. Like I talked to this guy Mike from Black Owned World, and hopefully people like that episode. It's not out yet, but we talked about sometimes we in the black community specifically, we get into businesses, we think we're doing good, we have our black owned business, quote unquote, and we do hair or something cool like that, but we don't ever think maybe I should own the not just a franchise because that's it is what it is, but how about we own like the chemicals that people use in their hair, or that, I mean, not just the product but like the products that are going to everybody. Why can't we
Yeah.
own that? Somebody else is
The
making that.
ingredients, right? The recipe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like why can't we own the trucking company that distributes all that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you want
Mm-hmm.
to be a truck driver, but you don't want to own the corporation that distributes for America? Like, bro, like think bigger.
Yeah.
Think a little bit
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah.
They can't kick you out and they can't underpay you if you own the business. I mean, they can try, but if all your friends are business owners, that can't happen
Exactly.
because they put you on
Exactly.
game.
Oh,
Tig was talking about
yeah.
that. Collaboration over competition all day.
Oh my goodness. And I mean, from somebody who's in a PhD program and a master's program at a predominantly Black school, HBCU, um, unfortunately, like you experience a lot of competition, whether you want to do it or not,
Why?
right?
There's there's
Because
no prize for being.
the thought is the market is too small, right? Or the opportunities aren't that great for Black people to break into something. Um, and so like there's competition,
Mhm.
right? And at the same time, what I appreciated was about a lot of my professors were um, they challenged us in a sense of like, you might be the only Black person in the room. How you gonna feel,
Hmm.
right? And I'm like, well, I've experienced that now. Like I've experienced that now. And then still knowing how to collaborate with, breaking in and collaborating with Caucasians, Latino, like knowing how to collaborate with them. And then also knowing my people who walk into the office and they see I might be the only Black person and being like, let's go, right? Like pulling them up with me and
Hmm.
showing them all the ropes and stuff like that. Like we're not going now, if you resist, then okay, that's on you and you're not there yet. But I'm all about collabing because I'm like, they always tell you don't reinvent the wheel
Right.
if you can build on something that's already has a good foundation, right?
Absolutely. That's what I've done as
Right.
much as I can, even with this show. It's like, what are stuff that works? Can we do things that work in regards to like setting up technology and stuff like that? And that's why generally I've been pretty easy going about like if somebody asks me questions about like how to set up a podcast, I try to tell them. Some other people might be like, "You doing a podcast?" For me, I just maybe I'm prideful. I think that no one's gonna quite do it like me, so I can tell them anyways. They're not gonna like push me out the market. I mean, but
But the
but that's the
confidence that we
confidence that
all
I
need
have. Right.
is that you got to know yourself. You got to know that, like, you know what? I have an audience and that person has an audience, and we can
Mm-hmm.
have the same structure,
Mm-hmm.
but my personality, that's my audience.
Right. Like,
Your
don't be so
personality is your
concerned.
audience.
Don't be
Yeah.
so intimidated by people who would like to be successful that you say, nah, I'm going to cut you off at the knees every chance I get because I don't want you to be successful and take away 1% of my success. No, it's
Mm-hmm.
not taking away 1% of my success. If you are really for, and let's make it a race thing real quick, if you are really for the progression of black people as a whole, whether it's be black people here in America or across the globe, like share some success. If you are 1% less
Mm-hmm.
successful, like it does not matter as long as we all
Mm-hmm.
can benefit. So when you walk into a room, people don't look at you like, oh, he's black, so like, should I be concerned? Is he gonna rob me? Like, nah, like we're all successful, we're all doing it big. Like, you don't have, I don't need to waste my time doing something to you. Like,
Yeah.
I own this place, obviously.
Right.
Like,
Right.
and hopefully I said that eloquently enough. Like, let's win so we can all win. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we can all eat.
Yeah. Pretty
Dr.
much.
Max,
That's how it goes. Yes.
we have gone to our time. It's been a really good time. Hopefully, people will tune in when we get together in the Costly community group. And if you guys want more information about that, look down below. That'll be cool. And I really do want to have more conversations with you. So, people who are listening, hit me up, send me DMs. If this is on YouTube, send a comment, send a message on
Yeah.
Twitter. Just let me know, like, do you want to hear more from Dr. Max? And what do you want to hear? We could talk. We could do this again.
Yeah. Give us some questions, some
Yeah,
topics.
questions.
Yes.
Those are good. So, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Find me. So my tag on Instagram is low key defense because I'm pretty much low key. But I'm talking to him, but
Mhm.
yeah,
There you go.
real low key out here. So low key defense on Instagram. You can DM me, you can follow me. Um, yeah, I should have some more posts coming up. I'm in the process of moving, so
There you go.
hopefully I'll have some more posts coming up.
We're excited. We're excited to see what you do next. And love the way you think. I think you have a lot of really great thoughts to contribute. And I think you can help a lot of people.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, hopefully.
let's
Hopefully this helped a lot of people too.
I hope so. I really do. I think it definitely offered a lot. So
Yeah.
thank you, Dr. Max. And until we meet again, keep it costly.